Panis quem ego dedero, caro mea est pro seculi vita. The bread that I will give is my flesh, for the life of the world. These are the words the priest prays after his Holy Communion in the Mass for today's station at San Lorenzo in Panisperna. And it is interesting to note why. Welcome to today's episode of Lenten Pilgrimage, the Roman Station Churches. I'm Jacob Stein, and today we go to San Lorenzo in Panisperna, one of the many churches in Rome dedicated to St. Lawrence, the deacon and martyr. But this church holds a deeper meaning, one that speaks directly to our Lenten journey and the heart of our faith. San Lorenzo in Panisperna stands on the site of St. Lawrence's martyrdom. It is here that he was burned alive for his unwavering faith. His final words echoing courage and conviction. Turn me over. I'm done on this side. But today I want to focus on something more. A profound connection between this church, its name, and the liturgy we celebrate here on this Thursday of the first week of Lent. One Lent, a monk priest friend shared a striking insight with me after he celebrated Holy Mass on this day's station, drawn from today's communion verse. One thing to note, during the Lenten stations, we find the most profound developments in liturgical traditions and thought on Thursdays. Why, you may ask? Historically, liturgies weren't celebrated on this day. It's not only that Giovedì, Thursday, is known for gnocchi, but it was a sort of rest day. This tradition carries over even in some pontifical universities in Rome. No class on Thursday, but instead a day of respite from courses, and the academic schedule included Saturday. That being said, the addition of stations on Thursday came later than the 6th century, and thus allowed for greater intentional depth to the assigning and richness of that day's liturgy during Lent. This might just be the case for San Lorenzo in Panisperna, drawn forth by my priest friend as a consequence of his prayer. San Lorenzo in Panisperna, a place steeped in history, devotion, and quite fittingly the very symbols of our Lenten pilgrimage, Panis and Perna, bread and ham. These are not just ingredients for a meal. They became profound symbols of sacrifice, charity, and ultimately the Eucharist itself. Among the many churches in Rome dedicated to St. Lawrence, San Lorenzo in Panisperna holds a unique distinction. Tradition holds that this was the very site of the deacon martyr's execution, where he was roasted alive on a gridiron for his unwavering fidelity to Christ and his service to the poor. It is said that even in the flames, the faith of Lawrence did not waver. With the humor of a saint consumed by divine love, he quipped, "Turn me over, I'm done on this side." Here in this very place, his blood was spilled, a sacrifice of flesh, a gift of self, an oblation in union with the suffering of Christ. The ashes of that fire bore witness to the bread broken in charity, the bread he had given to the poor, now consummated in the offering of his own body. The name Panisperna is not merely a reference to the street on which the church stands. It recalls the ancient tradition of the Poor Clares, who lived in the adjacent convent and distributed panis, bread, and perna, ham, to the poor on the feast of St. Lawrence, August 10th. This simple act of charity reflected the very mission of the saint, his love for the poor and his understanding that the true treasure of the church was not silver and gold, but the poor themselves. But beyond this tradition of charity, Panis and Perna take on a deeper significance today. Bread and flesh, two realities that, for Christians, immediately call to mind the mystery of the Holy Eucharist. It is Christ who tells us in today's communion verse, "The bread that I will give is my flesh for the life of the world." John 6:52. This is not just a metaphor, it's the very heart of our faith. The act of giving bread to the hungry is not merely an exercise in human generosity, it is a participation in the divine economy of salvation. St. Lawrence, in offering the church's goods to the poor, was living out the gospel in its fullness. He understood that Christ himself is the Panis vitae, the living bread, and that the act of charity is never separated from the ultimate gift, Christ's own body given for us. Here at San Lorenzo in Panisperna, on the Thursday of the first week of Lent, we recall not just the saint's death, but the ultimate truth to which his life bore witness. Bread given in charity becomes flesh, offered in sacrifice. The Church's mission of feeding the hungry finds its fulfillment in the Eucharist, where Christ feeds us with his very self, where our deepest hungers are satisfied. As we stand in this place of martyrdom today, let us consider, are we feeding on the true bread of life? Are we offering ourselves in charity as St. Lawrence did? Do we recognize in the Eucharist the fulfillment of the bread and flesh that sustains our earthly lives? Today's Station Church calls us to move beyond mere sustenance, to true sacrifice. Lent is a time of fasting, of stripping away, but it is also a time of being filled. In Christ, we do not hunger in vain. In his passion, our sacrifices find meaning. And in his resurrection, we find the fulfillment of every hunger, the satisfaction of every longing of our hearts. Thank you for joining us today at San Lorenzo in Panisperna, the place where Panis and Perna, bread and flesh, point us beyond themselves to the greatest mystery of our faith, the Holy Eucharist. May St. Lawrence, the third patron of Rome, intercede for us, that we too may become living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. Don't forget to join us tomorrow at Sancti Apostoli, and don't forget also that in the caption of this podcast, you'll find the link to a video tour of this very church. It's a sight to see because it's a church which is not regularly open to the public. But thankfully, here at Crux Stationalis, I'm able to take you there with me, to give you a beautiful image of the martyrdom of St. Lawrence, to see the very altar which now commemorates the spot of martyrdom of this holy saint. And I ask you to continue to pray for Crux Stationalis, for myself, as we take you with us and journey through Lent in this very tangible pilgrimage that Romans experience, which is a patrimony not just for those who live in Rome, but is your very patrimony as well. And please do me a favor, share this podcast with your family and friends. Help others explore the riches of our faith. And may God bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow.